Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. Pakistan's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Mr. Munir Akram, has spoken at a high-level debate being conducted at the United Nations Security Council regarding the climate and food security impact on the maintenance of international peace and security. Addressing this particular high-level debate and the August forum, Pakistan's permanent representative, Mr. Munir Akram, said Pakistan attaches high priority to the strict implementation of the Indus Water Treaty and aims to reinvigorate the Indus River Basin. He went on to say that Indus Basin was the largest contiguous irrigation system globally, providing food security to over 225 million people. And to reinvigorate this water body, Pakistan has launched the multi-dimensional Living Indus project. Ambassador Munir Akram further said increasing water demand coupled with climate change impacts creates the potential for the transboundary water disputes in several parts of the world. He also alluded to the fact to the rapid depletion and the melting of the glaciers up in the north in Pakistan as well, saying that these glaciers are melting due to extreme temperatures at an alarming rate. And this, together with heavier monsoons, leads to massive floods like the epic floods in 2022, causing damage of over $30 billion. He has also cautioned against securitizing the climate and development agendas, emphasizing that scarcity was the root cause of conflicts and sustainable development is the best means of conflict prevention. The Pakistani envoy also expressed concern over the lack of progress in reducing the emissions and providing adequate climate finance. He emphasized the need for the developed countries to reduce emissions by at least 43% by 2030. He also stressed the need for mobilizing the estimated $1.5 trillion annual investment for a transition to clean energy, which remains a significant challenge. He has also said that despite the promises, both the public and private investment in sustainable infrastructure in developing countries fall short, with the $100 billion annual climate finance commitment remaining unfulfilled. In today's program, we are going to talk about the Indus Water Treaty, also Pakistan's commitment towards this particular bilateral treaty between Pakistan and India that was facilitated by the World Bank, and how India had been violating this particular treaty, and also what are the mechanisms when differences and disputes between the two countries which are parties to this particular treaty come into effect. Also, we'll be taking a stock as to the issues of water scarcity in Pakistan and how it is currently affecting Pakistan's population, the food security, as well as what are the future threats related to this particular phenomenon, and what sort of policies, what sort of framework is required in that particular regard, and how crucial happens to the water management in that regard. Also, the kind of effects of climate change Pakistan had in the recent past, as we saw in the case of the devastating floods of summer 2022, and what needs to be done in that particular regard. We saw there were international commitments which were made by the international community. There were certain calls by the United Nations. Also, there were a lot of pledges made, but materialization of those pledges remains largely unfulfilled. There had been a slow response to that also. Also, when we talk about the food security issue, how it is related to that particular phenomenon of high melting and rapid melting of the glaciers in Pakistan, and ultimately what it will actually lead to. Also, the kind of urgency that has been urged upon by Pakistan's permanent representative to the United Nations, Mr. Munir Akram, urging the developed world to reduce their emissions by 47% by 2030. How that is doable, why the developed world hasn't been able to take some concrete measures in that particular regard, despite a lot of pledges and international agreements to that particular effect, and why the promises of a $100 billion climate financing also remained unfulfilled. Also, we'll be talking about the connection between the impacts of climate and food security to the maintenance of international peace and security. For all that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Syed Abu Ahmed Akif. He is former Climate Change Secretary of Pakistan. Mr. Akif, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to have been joined by Mr. Munir Ahmed. He's water and climate advocacy expert. Mr. Ahmed, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. In the studio, we are also honored to have been joined by Ms. Naela Chohan. She's former ambassador and also Special Secretary on Foreign Affairs. Ms. Naela, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Ms. Naela. When we talk about Indus Water Treaty, the significance of it, what did it basically signify when it came to the allocation of water resources between Pakistan and India, and how Pakistan had been committed to this particular treaty, given the fact that there had been a number of violations on the part of Indian side?
Well, this question has many parts to it. If we look at how it started, this region, South Asia, has the world's largest irrigation system, which was created by the British. And all the heads were left in India at the time of partition. So our dispute started from 1947, you could say. And from 48, we had further problems, and then started 6 years of negotiations. After that, the two sides agreed, Nehru and General Ayub Khan, in 1960, in September, decided to have this Indus Water Treaty, known as IWT, which was brokered by World Bank. So it was World Bank which was the guarantor. And as you know, World Bank and all these international organizations are basically, they comprise member states. So it was Australia, Canada, USA, New Zealand. These were the countries that were behind this World Bank support. Consequently, although Indus Water Treaty had many lacunas, because it is more on water sharing, not water management. So water sharing became an issue because the management part that we hoped would be played by the international organization, which is the World Bank, that didn't happen as efficiently as was expected. But it is still one of the best treaties in the world on water sharing. Now, having said that, you can see that in 2023, India decided to change the treaty, and they sent a note to Pakistan on this. Now, for Pakistan, it is imperative, because like Ambassador Munir Akram said at the UN, that this treaty has multifaceted impact. It is on climate change, because now we are talking of GLOF, and GLOF is basically glacier lake outburst flooding. So if the warming that is going on with climate change, these GLOFs come in, and India, you can see in 1971 also, when East Pakistan was created into Bangladesh, the main problem was that in West Pakistan it was thought that the water, the then East Pakistan had always inundations and floods, and so much resources was going there. But later on, World Bank confirmed that it was India that would release water in monsoon to inundate the people and have it as a political agenda. And even now they are doing that, because now that they have Article 370, which was abrogated in 2019, they claim that Kashmir is now integral part of India. So all these waterheads in Kashmir would be controlled by India, so they don't need to have this treaty. So this is a very warped psyche, because it is not only impacting the two countries politically, it is matter of lives which will be affected, by this mismanagement or lack of sharing, and then on top of it, the climate change.
Right. Mr. Ahmed, what's your understanding of it, the Indus Water Treaty and Pakistan's commitment to its adherence, and also at the same time we see violations on the part of India?
As the topic is introduced by Ambassador Naela, and I would take it to further, because like in that context, certainly we always face the water problem. In the dry season, they stop the water. They control the water, and they have built over 30 dams over there. And on the other hand, when it comes to monsoon, and they discharge all the water to these rivers, and our entire country is flooded with. And last year we faced $30 billion, the loss. So this is the case. And on the other hand, what they have, after the abrogation of the Article 370, they have trying to build more reservoirs over the Indus Basin that they control, and this would certainly have more impact on our agriculture, as well as the other issues that will arise because of the climate impact, as we are facing the brunt of the impact. So this is really a very difficult moment for us, and I believe this would further enhance the conflict, transboundary conflicts.
Right. Isn't there any sort of a mechanism that is there in the Indus Water Treaty if there is a sort of a difference that arises, or first of all, a question between the bilateral parties arise regarding to any of the issue, and further there is a mechanism of appointing a neutral expert regarding that, and later on, if he deems that this difference is going into a dispute, then there is also a mechanism of having a court of arbitration, right? So what does those measures actually provide in case if one party out of the two has issues or deems that its rights are being violated?
We have gone a couple of times to international court for such kind of dispute resolution, but we could not find solution to it. And as Ambassador Naela mentioned, that the arbitrator, like the moderator of this agreement, World Bank has to manage it. But I must say, World Bank could not manage the treaty, because having a treaty between two, and then after it's a long-term commitment to manage it accordingly, so that both countries could meet the water needs of both countries. At this moment, when India playing a very stubborn to their stance, their proclaimed stance, and certainly Pakistan has to emphasize on international forums, and also we need to engage consistently World Bank forums to mediate the conflicts. And I believe international court is really a bit difficult and tedious process, and both countries have to go for negotiations by third party. On the other hand, if we see that India never wanted to have any third party mediation, mediators between Pakistan and India to resolve any sort of disputes. So this stubbornness and this rigid environment will not resolve the issues, and it would create more chaos, and it would enhance the conflict basically. So I believe there should be some mediators to come forward to resolve the conflicts. Not only the water one, the other geopolitical issues are also be addressed over.
Right, Mr. Agif, now what's your understanding when we talk about the overall situation or overall phenomenon of water scarcity when it comes to Pakistan, and how do you think India's violation of Indus Water Treaty actually exacerbates that particular problem here in Pakistan?
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I think we need to see the whole global situation because nothing is static, everything is dynamic. The treaty is now 63 years old almost. And in these 63 years, I mean, we need to see, Ambassador Naela would second me, that the world operates on realism. I mean, Hans Morgenthau, the founder of realism in international politics, because morality is often the argument of the weak. And the world, I mean, as we have recently seen in the Middle East, international law is very weak because primarily international law does not have a sovereign implementer. So, I mean, having having said whatever about the treaty, the fact of the matter is that Pakistan is a very poor utilizer of its resources. And when we go to the World Bank or any other person, they would always point out to our poor management. We only use less than 40% of the available water. One. The farm sector employs almost half of Pakistan's employment, but it produces 0.1% of the total tax. The Abiana, which is the water charge, is, I mean, it's a joke. So the Abiana does not even fulfill 10% of the operation and maintenance cost of your resources. Then there are other domestic factors. Pakistan has got almost 3% of the world's population, but only 0.5% of the world's water resources. India and Pakistan, when we became separate, in the last 70 odd years, their water storage capacity is about 120 days. Pakistan's water storage capacity is less than 30 days. The global requirement is at least 100 days. We have not built a major dam in the last 50 years, ever since Naela was operative in 1976. So we must look inwards also. I mean, 93% of our water is used by agriculture. And of this 93%, 80% is used by 4 crops: wheat, cotton, sugarcane, and rice. But the 80% use of water produces only 5% of the GDP. So the questions for us are mostly domestic. I mean, the world actually retreats almost 50% of its wastewater. We treat less than 1%. So, I mean, we need to see inwards. I mean, notwithstanding the importance of international law. So we need to take a holistic picture of the whole thing. So when we
take a holistic picture of it, and we, as you mentioned, that we should look inwards, where to actually start from when it comes to the better management of water within the country?
I mean, countries undertake issues as per their priority. Do we really think the water is our priority? I've just mentioned one statistics: 80% of the water produces 5% of the GDP. The question is, it's a political economy question. Should we be growing sugarcane? Our sugarcane is not very efficient. The sugar content of a sugarcane, as we move upwards from the equator, the sugar content decreases. So the real question is, why should we be producing sugar? We don't have a competitive advantage in terms of sugar. So, I mean, we are one of the poorest users of water. For every unit of water used, we only produce $1.4 in value. So every statistic, I mean, and now, problematizing everything is climate change. We are one of the 10 most vulnerable countries in the world.
And that has actually exacerbated the situation?
Because, I mean, see, at the time of, in 1951, the first census of Pakistan had 33 million people. So, and now we have 240 million plus. So the population of Pakistan has grown more than 7 times. The water resources have not grown 7 times. So unless, I mean, we are going to keep sink, if we are going to grow like this, no resource, because Pakistan had an availability of 5,000 cubic meters of water per person at the time of independence, which is now down to less than 1,000. Primarily not because the water has decreased, but because the pressure on the water has increased. So we need to look inwards before we look outwards, because every international body will point out to these issues.
So does that call for the population control at the same time also?
Absolutely, absolutely, because our number one problem in Pakistan is the uncontrolled population growth and the uncontrolled urbanization. While, I mean, urban water use is only 7%. I mean, all industry and all domestic use is 7%. 93% goes to agriculture. So we need to, I mean, have implementation of our policies. So, I mean, all this whole mix is such a
So given the
toxic
fact
mix.
if there is a policy that is formulated and implemented in regard to controlling the population, so how to increase, where to look for to increase the water resources from? As given the fact there is climate change in action also, we saw the devastating floods back in summer 2022 also, as per this particular statement, and also talked about it already by so many experts of the field, that the glaciers up in the north are melting at a rapid pace due to extreme temperatures. So where to look for those water resources to have more capacity?
I mean, it is said in Urdu that, I mean, even in English we say that the truth is often very bitter. And we need to face the truth. Our own national body, the NAB, estimates $133 million per day is lost in corruption. That's $48 billion a year. So, I mean, this $30 billion of damages as with the floods, I mean, why doesn't our infrastructure hold? Because our infrastructure is very poor. So we need to look in. I mean, I'm a proponent of looking inwards.
Okay, when we talk about having the climate resilient infrastructure, for example, if that particular infrastructure is not holding against the force of this particular flood that is induced by the climate change. So when we talk about Pakistan being among the top 10 countries which are most vulnerable to climate change, and it is because of the fact of the development that happened in the developed world, and that's not the stance that Pakistani authorities take forward. It is been said by the United Nations Secretary General himself also while he was here on the visit during those floods of summer 2022. So at the same time, of course, there are a lot of things which have to be looked into inwardly, but there is at the same time the responsibility of the international community as well when it comes to the developing world getting that climate justice, not as a matter of charity.
See, the climate justice is again a moral argument. The world does not operate on moral arguments. I mean, very recently, I mean, 30,000 people have been killed in Palestine, and the world has not blinked an eye on this. So, I mean, climate justice, the developed world is not willing to accept historical responsibility, because that will open the floodgates. Then you will have historical responsibility for slavery, you will have historical responsibility for colonialism. So historical responsibility, as far as I think, is a no-no. They will continue to give whatever they want to give as charity, not as justice. So because, I mean, again, international
okay, how do you see the establishment of the loss and damage fund? It was spearheaded by Pakistan.
I mean, it has taken, I mean, now we are somewhere in COP28 or something. So it has taken 28 years of negotiations. Even now, it is a wishy-washy thing, this loss and damage fund. So because the developed world will continue to pull, I mean, its weight. So unfortunately, you need to see it realistically. I think it's not going to go anywhere.
Right, Ms. Naela, when we talk about the mechanism that has been evolved, that is part, is there any concrete mechanism when it comes to one party, if it violates the provision of that bilateral treaty between Pakistan and India, what is that mechanism to resolve the differences and disputes?
Well, taking the point further from Akif Sahab, I mean, real politics is very much there, that's true. In-house, cleaning is also very important. I can give my views on that also, but the question that you have asked, there are mechanisms. There is, court of arbitration where you could go, and we went to it, but you need two parties to go to arbitration for it to be effective.
Isn't there a provision of either of the party?
In Article 12G and F, these provisions are there. So you can go to court of arbitration of the IWT, which is Indus Water Treaty. But the point is, there are few lacunas in it. Firstly, the World Bank, which was at that time IBRD, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, has not taken its role as was mandated in the treaty, and they interpret that their job was only logistic and would not therefore be management. The fact of the matter is that even if logistics are maintained, the problem would not have aggravated to this level. So, their lack of taking their responsibility has affected. And then India, as Munir Sahab said, has always played a negative role, because it wants to use a, you look at India, they don't only have problem with Pakistan. For us, you can say, okay, we are lower riparian, India is upper riparian. With Nepal, they have a problem where Nepal is the upper riparian state, India is the lower riparian state, but still they have created problems for Nepal. You look at Bangladesh, India has problem with Bangladesh also on water. So, India's approach is extremely negative and destabilizing the region. And if they think that they can play that role of a regional power, pretending to be superpower, which I don't think they have the material for, even to be a regional power, they first have to show that grace. A bigger country has a bigger responsibility in stabilizing the region, while India is constantly destabilizing the region.
So if India doesn't show that particular grace, and the World Bank, as you already mentioned, it actually facilitated this particular bilateral treaty between the two countries. So what's the way forward? If the objections by Pakistani side continue to happen all along also, and India continues, especially as you already mentioned, that after the revocation of Article 370 in IIOJK, it continues to build more water reservoirs over there.
You see, even in 1951, when we started off our negotiations, we continued. Then we had 6 years of constant negotiations before you had the Indus Water Treaty. It was not signed in one day and negotiated in one day. It takes time, and we have to be perseverant. So, the way forward is what Munir Akram is doing, that he is making the world realize, because as I mentioned before, that the donor countries, whether when you spoke of climate justice, that has in COP27 become part of official commitment of the global north towards global south. They cannot renege from it.
And as a matter of climate justice, not as charity,
not at
which
all.
was categorically said by the United Nations Secretary General also.
And also for Pakistan. Pakistan also said, we are not asking for charity, we are asking for justice. So, that has to be borne in mind. But coming down to what Akif Saab said, you have a water policy, but you have not been able to implement it. You have not been able to implement agricultural reforms. And when you have political agendas, then that political agenda overwhelms the national interest. So, I do agree with him that you do bring your house in order, but at international level you have to be perseverant, you have to stand your ground, you have to make the world understand the repercussions, because it is not just Pakistan. There are so many countries which will be influenced by India's nefarious activities in the region, going down to Maldives also. So, this is a very serious issue. It's a matter of lives and livelihoods, both. So, this cannot be neglected.
So, you're of the view it is incumbent upon Pakistani authorities, especially the diplomats who have that global outreach, to keep sensitizing the global community in that particular regard. So, naturally, the authorities would be looking forward to a sort of an outcome after sensitizing the global community to any sort of a particular effect in order to make India abide by what it had agreed to, especially when it comes to the implementation of this particular treaty. As per this statement, that Pakistan adheres to it, Pakistan aims to reinvigorate the Indus Basin system and attaches great importance to its commitment towards this particular treaty. Then what could be the possible outcome after that sensitization of the global community?
Sensitization will have effect, because then those donor countries which have become complacent would realize, just like in Palestine, you can see when the people came to the streets, that's when the politicians realized the repercussions on their vote bank, and then they started taking more positive approach towards Gaza. When people stand up, when international community, the people stand up, then the leaders also realize it. We will continue our effort. The international community also has to play its part, because now, as they say, it's a global village. If one part of the planet is affected, everyone is affected. And when you are going to COP28, you can imagine how serious the repercussions of climate change are already being estimated and evaluated. And if serious action is not taken, it will take the whole globe into it. The whole planet will be affected. So, I may say that my house is washed out by the floods, but tomorrow your house will also be washed out. So, you can't remain complacent.
Right, your point is well taken. What's the way forward, Mr. Ahmed, if India continues to violate it and Pakistan continues to sensitize the international community, but there has to be a concrete outcome of all this particular exercise that Pakistan continuously at the international level continues to do so?
There are two things that we can do. One is we can keep on sensitizing the international forums and trying to exert our pressure on them and asking them to curtail their relationship or the funding to India, if possible, if we can exert pressure. And I hope on the humanitarian basis, if we can inculcate some awareness across the border, then it would also, but I don't see such kind of initiatives would really take any positive turn for Pakistan until Pakistan try to manage its own resources what are available. For example, if we cannot manage the flood water, for example, or the damage that is caused by the flood water, one. Secondly, as Ambassador Naela mentioned about national water policy, that was approved in February 2018 or March 2018, and till the day it is just shelved and it is dusting, and we cannot take even 1 point of the national water strategy ahead, and we were just unable to implement. And that water strategy, national water strategy, is just several check dams and other resources, and keeping the water resources, intact, and making their pathways and trying to, putting several mechanisms to manage the water or in the water availability in the dry season. But unfortunately, we cannot. But this does not mean the internal mismanagement does not really mean we shall not pressurize India, or we shall not keep on sensitizing or pressurizing the international forums that what injustice India is doing. I think we shall keep them on, and also those institutions, they are responsible for development funding, we shall pressurize them that they should conditionalize the funding that they give to India for certain development projects. So that way I think it may help.
What are the dangers, if you would like to shed light in blunt terms, when it comes to the violations of India and the kind of the water terrorism it is involved in against Pakistan? What are the major dangers and the threats, especially when it comes to regional security, peace, and ultimately that might lead into international peace and security?
Transboundary water conflicts certainly would create more non-traditional security threats for Pakistan, and it would create maybe some strategic conflict or enhance the strategic conflict between the two countries. Well, and secondly, like when we don't have water, and if the people are so up to their nose, like it is because of India, and they might have certain, I don't know what type of step they would take, but certainly it would have transboundary, surety in the transboundary conflicts. So, and even if you see the reaction of the Muslims within the India, they might have more vocal voices for it because they are part of us. They are,
There is a huge rampant discrimination against them
that is,
going on
that is.
since the BJP came into power back in 2014.
The Hindutva type.
So do you think, as you already mentioned, that one of the possible solutions to this particular problem could be the humanitarian appeal across the border on the other side of the border? Do you think that's going to work out?
At least it would create a voice there, and it may add a little bit more, like if we have certain voices coming out from India, it may pressurize those international organizations working with India on certain water development things. And on the other hand, China has already, they also have some conflicts with India. And I don't know what could be the mechanism, but both conflicts can, the conflict, China's conflict with India can also help us, because China is always very, sporting to our, and they also have some, bilateral deals with India, and China can also press India for certain level of justice, water justice for us.
Okay, so,
but there are many lame type solutions, but not if you see, like if we do something this, and it would concrete, there would be a concrete solution to it.
So if we talk from the perspective of Indians, as Ms. Naela Chohan has already mentioned, that India wants a new treaty. So what is the basis on which it wants a new treaty with Pakistan when it comes to replacing that older Indus Water Treaty?
Basically, they are interested, like to grab the entire water. They say that it is mentioned in that they can use the water as much as they can, and on the other hand, after having, because the Kashmir annexed with them, and they believe like this is the occupied Kashmir is their part, and they can control all the resources, and they have like also I would call like invaded with their own local, for the demographic changes, and they are building up several infrastructure over there to control the occupied Kashmir's resources. So if they have more water control over there, and they have dams over there, so there are, but I think we need to keep on emphasizing on the mediator, World Bank, and other UN forums to have like to side Pakistan's stance for because it's a matter of life and livelihood for our people.
Right, Mr. Akif, now both of our other participants are of the view, no matter how many problems are there internally, they need to be taken care of course, but at the same time, we have to keep sensitizing the international community as to India's transigence and violation of this particular treaty.
Unfortunately, I'm not a very good person in terms of international law, because I don't envy the job of Pakistani diplomats. They're fighting a very uphill battle. India has the largest population in the world. It has exceeded China. It has the second highest foreign exchange reserves. And I mean, money makes the mayor go. So the global community, in spite of whatever they would, the lip service that they would give you, they would deep down, they would be only interested in self-interest. The whole world operates in self-interest. I would just like to point out one of the sentences which was spoken by the US Secretary of State, Mr. James Baker, when he was inaugurating the Hans Morgenthau Center at the University of Chicago. And he said that although we are a moral nation, but morality is no substitute to realism in international politics. So, I mean, there's abidance and there's violation. In between, there's foot dragging. So that's what you have international lawyers for. If India can bide its time, and I mean,
so then, what's the way forward for Pakistan?
the way forward for Pakistan is primarily, I think, internal. We have not been able to even appoint a full-time Indus Water Treaty commissioner for the last 10 years. We are just making do with one person who is also the joint secretary in the ministry. So, I mean, at least we need to put our house in order before we appeal to the world. And India has not only the real world pressure on its side, but also climate change. India would say that the treaty has become outdated because at the time it was signed, we did not have climate change as an agenda. If we have got the glacier melt, they also have the glacier melt. So, I mean, I don't have an immediate solution in mind.
Right. Ms. Naela, what's your understanding? When you already mentioned, why does India require a new treaty with Pakistan?
Basically, their whole idea is expansionism and domination. And like Munir Saab said that they have problem with China. Basically, if you look at these rivers, they emanate from Tibet. And India has a problem with Aksai Chin. India has been creating problems in Tibet for China with this objective of strategic, hold on these resources. And that's why they're creating this problem. Why is India wanting to review the agreement? Because they want to have total monopoly, and they want to stifle Pakistan, they want to stifle Muslims, whether in their country or in their neighborhood. So, India at this moment is like a bull in a china shop, and they have no respect for others. But we have to stand our ground, we have to defend our position, we have to put our house in order. We can go for drip irrigation, we can do so many steps, make canals cleaner, deeper, so the water flow is greater. But having said that, you still need to have the flow of the water from its source to its end user.
As mutually agreed.
As mutually agreed. So that we have to stand our ground, we have to negotiate, we have to create awareness, we have to expose India, we have to create awareness and sensitivity in the global north.
Right, Ms. Naela, now unfortunately we're short of time. There are a lot of different diverse aspects to be discussed in this particular show, but regarding an urgency that has been urged upon by Pakistan's permanent representative to the international community by of reducing the emissions by 43% by 2030, and also going towards getting that funding of $1.5 trillion for the transition to clean energy. How crucial is that?
That is crucial, and I think that's what was main focus in the COP27 also. So he is basically reiterating the international community's commitment made in COP27, because if you see the last COP, that was about implementation. The ideas had already been discussed. So in COP28 it is about implementation, and now the world is pressing that the global north fulfills its commitment to global south, and climate justice should be implemented. The pledges made should be given. As yet, even the pledges made in Geneva to Pakistan have yet not been sent. So, they are hoodwinking their responsibility, they cannot do that. So, whether they say the going back to history is a no, going back to history is yes. And now you have scholars and philosophers like Achele who are talking about necropolitics, which is going back to how colonial mindset has exploited the world and brought it to the level that it is in now. So, the global north has to take its responsibility.
Right, Mr. Ahmed, in a very ideal situation, if India starts adhering to the treaty and the things on that front come into very much line, but at the same time, due to the climate effect, the glaciers up in the north in Pakistan are melting at a very rapid pace. So how to deal with that problem?
There are a couple of things that we could do. One is we have to manage the glow phenomena, as we may learn from Nepal. They have so many glow flakes, like the water coming from the glacier melt, and they are managing their glow phenomena, and it is not very dangerous as that we have in our northern areas. Shishbar Lake always burst and it damaged like the entire infrastructure on the way to the sea. This is the one thing that we try to learn the management. And secondly, consistently we need to launch a consistent water diplomacy for Pakistan. And based on the national water policy that we approved in 2018, and that is very comprehensive national water policy. And because we usually off and on we project such kind of issues globally, like when it comes to certain forums. But I think a consistent policy, water diplomacy.
Your point is well taken.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're short of time. Mr. Akif, if you have some last closing comments to make, please go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Syed Abu Ahmed Akif, former Climate Change Secretary of Pakistan, thank you very much for being with us on the show. Mr. Munir Ahmed, water and climate advocacy expert, thank you very much for your time for being with us on the show tonight. And Ms. Naela Chohan, former Ambassador and Special Secretary on Foreign Affairs, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.